Have you noticed how everyday life just feels a little less exciting than it used to? Like how the constant, relentless hum of the modern digital world somehow leaves you feeling emotionally exhausted, fragmented, and strangely numb? Well, in this, we're going to explore the fascinating yet deeply unsettling limits of human information processing. We'll start way down at the microscopic level inside your brain, looking at how you process just a single sentence, and then zoom all the way out to the modern economy to understand exactly why this endless stimulation might literally be shutting us down. Take a look at this sentence. Fred eats a restaurant. Just read that and pay close attention to how you feel right in this moment. Your brain likely just experienced a tiny, almost imperceptible cognitive glitch, like a momentary freeze, right? So why does a sentence like that actually make your brain work harder? What's really interesting here is that it exposes a fundamental limitation in how our minds process information, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. That brief moment of friction you just felt, it isn't just confusion, it's an actual measurable physiological event. And it turns out it's the exact same biological mechanism that makes navigating our modern landscape of endless stimulation so deeply emotionally draining. To really grasp this, we need to look at the brain on conflict and unpack a little bit of psycholinguistics. To understand this cognitive bottleneck, scientists use something called event-related potentials, or ERPs, to literally measure the exact processing effort your brain exerts when it encounters conflicting information. By placing electrodes right on the scalp, they can watch the electrical storms that happen in real time when you read a word that just doesn't belong. You see, processing information isn't free. It costs real, biological energy. This brings us to a fascinating processing tug-of-war happening in your head, specifically between syntax and semantics. Inside your mind, there's this constant hidden battle. Every single time you read a sentence, your brain runs two parallel streams. It's decoding the syntax, the strict grammatical rules, and at the exact same time, the semantics, the actual meaning and real-world logic. Now, usually, they work in perfect harmony, but when they clash, a massive amount of cognitive effort is required just to resolve the dispute. And researchers can pinpoint exactly where you're struggling by looking at two distinct brainwaves, the N400 and the P600. If the grammar is wrong, the P600 wave spikes. But if the meaning of the words suddenly stops making sense, if reality twists just a little bit, the N400 wave spikes. And that N400? It represents a massive surge of processing effort. It's your brain working in overdrive. So what happens when these cues collide? Let's look at what researchers call the processing competition. How does the brain actually resolve this conflict? It's through a concept called the processing competition account. Basically, when rigid grammatical rules corner the actual meaning of a sentence, your brain's semantic stream is forced to take on the heavy lifting. It's a literal competition for bandwidth inside your head, triggering that exhausting N400 brainwave. This, right here, is the biological architecture of your overwhelm. Look at these thematic violations from the study. When an early grammatical rule forces an impossible meaning, like, say, eating a restaurant or eating in a sandwich, your semantic stream gets completely overloaded. The syntax is technically fine, but the meaning is just absurd. Your brain spends immense energy trying to visualize eating in a sandwich. It's like a micro-trauma of confusion. And this brings us to a really crucial takeaway. Human attention and cognitive processing are strictly finite resources. Every time we encounter conflicting information, a digital anomaly, or just a bizarre piece of data, we drain our mental battery. This strict biological limit is the very root of our modern emotional exhaustion. So let's take this concept, the limits of human attention, and zoom out from the micro level to the macro. Now that we've seen how much energy your brain burns just to process one weird sentence, what happens when corporations and digital platforms actively try to overwhelm that exact biological bottleneck? Like, what happens to our emotional presence when that exhausting N400 brainwave is triggered not just once, but thousands of times a day? Well, according to researchers at the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research, the free market knows all about your cognitive limits. And honestly, it gets worse. It actively weaponizes them. They understand that your attention is a scarce resource, and they have a massive, massive financial incentive to manipulate exactly how you allocate it. This leads us into the economics of obfuscation and how firms are weaponizing information overload. Firms essentially engineer the modern world to bypass your understanding by deliberately overwhelming your cognitive streams. Much like that bizarre sentence completely overloaded your semantic processing, firms use something called product complexification. They make things so unnecessarily convoluted that your brain simply gives up trying to find the meaning. You adapt by feeling nothing. You just kind of accept it. We're constantly taught that more information is better, right? That the internet gives us all this power. But in reality, drowning you in data is a deliberate strategy to shut down your processing capacity. This competitive information supply causes severe attention fragmentation. It literally reduces your knowledge, leaving you entirely overstimulated and ultimately completely numb. There is an actual playbook to induce this overload. A firm creates a convoluted product, drowns you in competitive noise, hides the real, relevant details, and then exploits your exhaustion. They're essentially hacking your N400 brainwave, ensuring you simply do not have the mental bandwidth to understand what you're buying, or honestly, even what you're experiencing day to day. Now, regulators try to fix this by forcing firms to disclose facts, regulating the content. But just regulating the content doesn't work if the consumer's attention is already tapped out. I mean, you can hand an exhausted person a dictionary, but they're not going to read it. So regulators try format regulation instead, demanding that things be quote-unquote easy to understand. But the sobering truth of the paper is this. Even if the format is incredibly simple, if the underlying system or product is designed to exhaust your cognitive limits, you're still going to be overwhelmed. You can put a simplified warning label on a fundamentally incomprehensible modern life, but the complexification still wins. This endless, relentless stimulation forces a reward adaptation. We just stop caring. We go numb. So I want to leave you with this haunting reflection to consider the next time you feel completely emotionally exhausted and disconnected from the digital world. If your brain is biologically wired to struggle and burn precious energy over a single misplaced word, what is happening to your mind and your soul in a world intentionally designed to keep you perpetually confused?